I mean, that has to do with when Jesus says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So the idea that what he has said, what he has taught, what he represents is unchanging.
Yeah, I would agree.
But then if it says yesterday he was unchanging, does that imply the existence of a past where he was unchanging?
Okay.
You take my point? Well, you're getting it, because if you're saying he's only in the present moment, then why is it important that he was in the past unchanging?
We can look at the Bible and we can see that these things happened, and we can know that they happened. I think it's I can't get it. I don't get how that would necessitate the other, but yeah.
Well, I'm not saying it wouldn't necessitate it, but I think that if we were having like a debate in philosophy class, like I think this is sort of something that would come up, which is like, does this imply that there is an existent past? Because where you're saying that the only existence is present, is like it gets really complicated about how you refer back to the past and how you refer to things that are happening if existence is only present. Like whether there's a guarantee of what happened in the past or whether that's just memory. I think it's Augustine who focuses a lot on memory in his philosophy, is like the idea of the past is just memory. It exists only in memory kind of thing. So like I said, I think we're getting into some complicated sort of, what do they call it? Something physics.
Metaphysics?
Yeah, it's like metaphysical philosophy, which I don't love, but that's I think that's where it gets into a little bit. So, I mean, maybe just your basic thoughts on the idea of the past existing only in memory. Is that then the case for God? You know, is he only remembering the things that he did with Israel? Is it memory, or is there some other kind of aspect to it if he's only participating in the present?
So the only thing that we have access to is the present moment, and that's always been the case. It seems like intuitive to say that now is all that exists, because now is all that has ever existed from our perspective.
Sure.
If somebody wants to say that, well, that isn't the case from God's perspective, that the past and the present actually has an ontological state, I could say, okay, but where do you find that? Why should I believe that?
Yeah.
It seems just natural and intuitive to say that now is all that exists.
Yeah, I think it sort of, to me, would be an inference of authority, which I think is sort of a lot of this stuff, which is what, like, based on what God does in the Bible, we're inferring his capability to do it in various different ways. So in this question of time, I would say to you, yesterday I had a slice of pizza for lunch. Now that is my memory that I'm iterating to you, and I have no way of proving to you that fact. We'd get into the scientific method of how you would prove that yesterday I had a slice of pizza. Okay, you'd have to go through my digestive tract. I'd have to find you a receipt of where I purchased the pizza. Okay, but you take my point. So now we get to God, and God says, yesterday I flooded the world, and Noah got in an ark and wrote it. And so he says that, and it's written down, and we here on earth try to find evidence that those things happen. So now, is it authoritative that happened, or does it exist only in memory? And that's, I think, sort of an interesting abstraction, because then if you say that God only has access to the present, then God has no way of proving to us in that essence that something in the past happened. And I think that's an interesting implication on God's character.
I don't remember what that objection is called, but it is a philosophical objection that I've heard about. I dismissed it. I saw an open theist called Alan give a rebuttal of it, and I just thought it was silly. So I haven't internalized what the answer would be. I just don't see the problem. So I don't know what to object to.
Well, I guess it's because and you don't have to answer this today if you don't have I'm just saying my personal, it is personally an objective for me, because it has to do with trusting God and God's authority. Because when a person says something to you, your trust is built on a number of stepping blocks in our world that's fallen and flawed. But if you are getting a trust statement from a perfect God, there's some sort of evidence built up behind him. There is this, when he says Jesus Christ was the same yesterday, that's a universal truth statement that, if God never lies, cannot be taken any other way than the truth. Like that has to be the truth. And so he's saying a truth about the past. And for him to absolutely know the past, he has to absolutely know the past, not just remember it. So I guess you could make an argument that God has a perfect memory. So we have imperfect memory, God has a perfect memory, and so he's perfectly recalling the events of the past.
Or, I mean, there are tons of stuff about God that we don't know the mechanisms about, right?
Yes,
we don't know we don't know how he brings about stuff by his omnipotence. We don't know how he heals, but we do trust and hope that he does heal. We don't know how. It could be that God has. Let's hypothetically say that God doesn't have perfect memory. Personally, I think God has perfect memory. I don't see why he wouldn't have.
He would.
But let's say that he has set up some recording mechanism. For example, DNA. He can write everything we do in DNA. He can have some angel write things down. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, I think that's very true. So, but what we're doing on kind of both sides of the argument is abstracting. We're saying if God's making us a promise, if God's doing something, like we know that he has some sort of capability that's beyond our understanding. And I would be comfortable if we just take an agnostic position and say that it could be open theism or it could be classical theism. It could be that God is fully participating in past and future because the Bible doesn't really tell us, or it could be that God is only participating in the present, and he has the perfect ability to prophesy and the perfect ability to recall memory. And either of those things could be true, but scripture just doesn't give us the information to necessarily glean between one or the other. We just have to know that one of those is true for God to have the capability to do the things that he does in scripture and how he interacts with it.
So if you come away from this thinking that the dichotomy is either open theism or classical theism, I've failed, because there is a middle ground, okay?
Sure, yeah.
There are lots of people who believe in either simple foreknowledge or Molinism or other types of foreknowledges that aren't classical theists. I'm just... it's just that the early church, they were classical theists, and they were the ones who brought about sort of this strain of thought into the church, which is why I thought it was helpful to talk about classical theism in particular. Not because I wanted to dichotomize the two, because there is lots of middle ground.
Yeah, and I don't mean to characterize that as a dichotomy either, almost more of a spectrum, of course. I mean, those are just maybe the two, you might call them the most popular beliefs necessarily. I'm not familiar enough to know. But I would almost say myself that I would take a more middle ground position, because I've always personally disliked the kind of massive abstraction that we do, where we say that God is so out there and so bizarre, and he interacts with us in such a mysterious way that we can't even know what it is. We can't even know even remotely what he looks like and all that kind of stuff. I very much prefer the idea that he interacts with us in the present moment, and he interacts with us in very specific ways, such as appearing as a human, such as appearing as an angel, and all the types of things that he does. I think he does things very specifically, and I prefer that much more than the traditional kind of the Lord works in mysterious ways. I think that I definitely do prefer that.
So this actually brings me to why I wanted to talk to you in the first place. Why do I bother talking about this? I think Calvinists and Arminians and Provisionists and probably even some Ortho-bros and some Roman Catholics, they are Christians. They are saved. Why do I bother talking about open theism in the first place?
Yeah.
That's because there are certain things that we can believe about God that can be harmful for at least certain people.
True.
What's positive for me is that I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but most people live as if open theism is true. Most people pray as if they think they can impact God. Yeah. And I just happen to believe that that is true, and that you can pray something a year from now that God hadn't thought that you would pray about, and he will give you that thing that you pray about. I believe that is a distinct possibility. Outside of open theism, I don't see how anybody could believe that, but people live as if it's true. But on the flip side, There are some people who can really go down into metaphysical rabbit holes, like, for example, if they really internalize that God knows one specific path perfectly, this can lead a lot of people to nihilism and sort of dismissal, and a lot of unnecessary pain, not wanting to pray for things, not wanting to pray for others, not bothering to try to change people's minds. I've seen this stuff lead there.
Yeah.
And so it's important for me that people know that God is presently active and aware, so that people aren't led astray into these like constricted spaces.
Yep. I 100% agree with that.